Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of ICAL 13 for giving us a speaking slot in spite of the very late submission. So the topic we will be talking about today is exploring the pronominals in South Munda languages, a comparative study, and the languages in concern are Gorum, Sora, Remobondo, Didegata, and Gutop Gadba. As we can see, the authors are, the list is a bit odd. It's a collective team. It's a collective work, so we are a team of 12 members. This presentation provides a comparative analysis of pronominal systems in 5 South Munda languages spoken in Orissa, that are Gorum, Sora, Remobondo, Didegata, and Gutop Kadaba. The languages, Sora, the data is collected for Sora, it is collected from Gajapati area, and Gorum and Gutop, it's collected from Koraput, and Didei and Remo, it's collected from Malkangiri. This study outlines a shared typological profile characterized by the integration of first and second person features within the verbal complex and minimal or zero marking for third person. The discussion also covers distinctions such as exclusivity, duality, incorporation of subject and object markers, possessive constructions including alienability contrast, as well as reflexive, benefactive, reciprocal, indefinites, interrogatives, and demonstrative forms. So due to time and space constraint, we have given only a very few previous studies, that is CISO 2003, Osada 2010, and Zeit and Anderson 2003, and Anderson 2005. So below in this table, we are showing the basic pronominal forms of the 5 South Munda languages. So first of all, we will be discussing the forms of pronominals in the subject form and its incorporation into the verbal complex. All 5 languages exhibit subject indexing on the verb, but they differ in morphological position, that is prefix or suffix, and person hierarchy. Subject indexing is the core morphological property of South Munda languages, but individual languages show varying levels of retention of Proto-Munda features. So as seen in the table, Gorum has verb indexing for as prefixes for first and second person, and in case of third person, singular is unmarked, and in third person plural only the plural suffix is marked, and we have shown the examples also. And in case of Sora, person number suffixes and as well as plural prefixes are marked across all person and number. In case of Didei and Gutop, only first person and second person are fully marked, and in case of third person, plural marker is either marked or optional, and third person singular is unmarked. However, in Remo, there is suffixation, but it is marked only on the first and second person, and third person, both singular and plural are unmarked. This is the table showing the object forms of the 5 languages. As we can see, the objective case marker A or O or A are used to indicate object pronominal forms. So we will also discuss the object forms, incorporation of the pronominal objects in the verb complex. These languages show greater variation in object marking than in subject marking. The primary contrasts lie in whether the object is indexed on the verb or only marked on the noun or pronoun. Out of the 5 languages, we have observed that there is incorporation of the object form in the verb complex only for Gorum and Sora. Gorum uses the prefix e to form the pronominal object form, but then there is also incorporation in the verb for first person and second person. But just like in the subject form, third person is also unmarked in the object form, in the object of the object in the verb complex. And second, the marking of second person plural in the verb complex is disappearing. Like the younger generation has started omitting the incorporation of the second person plural object form in the verb. As for Sora, there is marking in the verb complex of the object form for first person, second person, and third person plural only. Third person singular is unmarked. These are examples for Remo, Gutop, and Didei. In these 3 languages, they uses objective case markers to mark the pronominal objects, but there is no incorporation into the verb of the object forms. And the object marking shows a continuum of morphological retention. So ranking from high retention to low retention, Gorum and Sora shows the highest retention of Proto-Munda feature, and Didei being in between, and Remo and Gudop shows the least retention. Duality and dual number inclusivity distinctions vary significantly across these languages, reflecting different levels of Proto-Munda feature retentions. Regarding duality inclusivity, only Remo retains both duality inclusivity marking out of all the 5 languages. Dual marking is seen in all persons, and dual inclusivity is encoded in suffixation on the verb position except in third person dual. Didei retains the dual marking, but there is no inclusivity or exclusivity marking. And pronominal is optional for second person, but obligatory for first and third person. And Gutop has lost its dual marking, but retains the inclusivity marking. Inclusivity, they have different forms for first person plural, exclusive and inclusive. Inclusivity is encoded in the noun, but it is optional in the verb. As for Gorum and Sora, as we can see, both dual marking and inclusivity marking are lost. But in Sora, it is exclusivity is encoding of exclusivity is retained in the verb form. So Remo and Didei preserve 3-way number singular, dual, plural, reflecting Proto-Munda feature. Inclusivity remains strong category for Remo and Gadaba. Sora retains exclusivity only but lost duality, and Gorum represents maximal reduction, lacking both categories. In case of possessives, all languages use morphological marking on the possessor. but they differ in treatment of alienable versus inalienable, and use of reduced pronouns versus prefix or suffixes. Gorum uses affixes nu and ta to mark possessives, and there is no distinction of alienability in Gorum. And the affix nu is used for attributive form, and ta is used for predicative form. And Sora employs reduced pronominals to mark possessives. And in Sora also, alienability distinction is not marked. In Gutop, the genitive nu is used on pronouns or pronouns to mark possessive, and doesn't distinguish between alienable and inalienable. And for Gutop, nu, the genitive marker nu is used for both attributive and predicative forms. They also use the genitive ne to mark possessive, but Dide and Remo, they have alienability distinction, but only in kinship terms. In Dide, prefixation patterns differ by person in inalienability, and in Remo, only first and second person is marked for inalienability. The expression of self-directed versus mutual action reveals borrowing and contact effects, especially there are borrowings from Desia. There is differing levels of verbal versus pronominal morphology, and unique strategies for mutuality are also observed. In Sora, the suffix dem is used to mark reflexiveness, and benefactive is realized via separate postpositions upsele. In Gorum, reflexive suffix ne is added to the basic pronoun to form reflexives, and benefactive is realized by affixation of gi and ne. In the day, they have independent borrowed pronouns for reflexives. Nije, they use nije is the borrowed word from Desia. They use nije with suffixes to form reflexives. And for benefactive, it is realized through nije plus postposition of sa and sa. In Gutop, reflexives are formed by pronominal reduplication plus the emphatic marker or. And they also sometimes use the borrowed Desia word nije for self. And benefactive in Gutop is realized by through genitive suffixation plus the postposition lai or pulai. Remo uses the u suffix for forming the reflexives, and they borrow. Remo also use the borrowed word nije, and reflexive in Remo is formed via compounding of pulai and u. Dide, Remo, and Sora shows strongest verbal encoding of reciprocity. Gutop shows least grammaticalization, and verb reduplication is indicated in Gorum. In Dide, the verbal prefix or is used to form reciprocals, but there is no distinct reciprocal pronoun. In Remo, it is quite different. There is a verbal infixation of the form VN to form reciprocals. And this follows vowel conditioned allomorphy. In Gutop, there is no dedicated form, just like in the reflexives. In reciprocals also, they use nominal reduplication with the emphatic marker O. In Sora, they use the verbal prefix er, and they require plural subjects and mutual action. In Gorum, the suffix ne and verb reduplication is observed. For example, li, la, ne, ere. In Gorum, grammatical reciprocity as verb is in verb is reduplicated. In this slide, we will discuss indefinite pronouns. Indefinite expressions differ in whether they are dedicated lexical items or derived from interrogatives or other forms, and whether they are sensitive to polarity, that is negative versus non-negative environments. In Gorum, there are lexical indefinites. They have dedicated forms. And these negative indefinites co-occur with verbal negation. In Sora, the indefinite pronouns are derived from interrogatives, and they don't have indedicated forms. And the suffixes ti and ja are used, are suffixed to the interrogatives to derive indefinite pronouns. And it is the same, Sora and Gutop follows the same strategy. In Gutop also, there is no dedicated form. Suffixation of ki and nu to the interrogatives is used to form the Gutop indefinite pronouns. They also have lexical indefinites, and they can be used as full argument NPs, and dedicated forms with negative participle in negative indefinites. Remo also has lexical indefinites, and negative indefinites co-occur with verbal negation. Dedicated forms with negative indefinites co-occur with a verb. In this slide, we will discuss interrogative pronouns. All 5 languages use distinct lexical roots to question person, object, and choice. In Gorum, as we can see, they have distinct lexical forms for person, object, choice. And there is human versus non-human distinction across all 5 languages. In Sora also, there are distinct lexical forms. There is human, non-human distinction. But in Sora, there is structural flexibility. The interrogative pronouns can move within the sentence. And it's the same case with Didei, Gutop, and Remo. They have distinct lexical forms, and they all show human versus non-human distinction. This will be...
You have about 1 minute left to wrap up.
Okay, sir. This is the last feature that I'm going to discuss. In this slide, we will discuss demonstratives or DXs in the 5 languages. Demonstratives in these languages exhibit distance-based DXs, but vary in whether they encode visibility and whether they serve determiner or pronominal functions. Remo is the richest among the 5 languages in encoding distance. Remo has a 4-way distinction, that is proximal, distal, remote visible, and remote invisible. And for adverbial demonstratives also, it shows the same 4-way distinction. And out of the 5 languages, Remo has the most elaborate system. Examples are shown below. Gutok has only 3-way distinction, that is proximal, distal, and remote. The remote is, there is no visibility marking on the remote. And this 3-way distinction appears across all functions, pronominal demonstrative, adjectival demonstrative, and adverbial demonstrative. And visibility is neutralized in remote deexis. Didai also has a 3-way distinction, proximal, distal, and remote visible. However, in Didai, definite suffix ne has to be added to the demonstratives for visibility. Gorum has 2-way distinction, proximal and distal, visible, invisible. They also have 2-way distinction for adverbial distinctions, and partial reduction in adverbials is observed. Sora also has 4-way distinction, just like Remo, proximal, distal, remote visible, and remote invisible. But in case of adverbial distinctions, they make only 2-way contrast. So to conclude, I would like to say that this study demonstrates that the pronominal systems of South Munda languages share a strong person hierarchical alignment, favoring first and second person verbal indexing while maintaining minimal third person marking. However, notable gradients exist across the group. Remo preserves the most conservative Proto-Munda features such as duality, inclusivity, and also the 4-way distinction of demonstratives, whereas Didai and Gutok show partial retention and structuring, and Gorum and Sora exhibit advanced morphological simplification, which can be largely influenced by neighboring non-Munda languages. The variation across domains like argument indexing, possession reflexive or reciprocal encoding, and demonstratives highlights both inherited patterns and extensive context-induced change, reflecting a continuum of linguistic evolution within South Munda. These are the references. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very rich presentation, very interesting insight into South Munda. We have time for questions and comments now. Please write in the chat or raise your hands. Greg has raised his hand. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah. Thanks for that. I mean, obviously, you guys have done a lot of questionnaire work here, but that also shows the problems with using only questionnaires when you're doing analysis, because there's a lot of errors in what you said, I'm afraid, but too many for me to even get into all of them right now. But I'll just do a couple. One, the is not a person marker at all. It doesn't mark second or third person in Sora. It's the vowel that goes with the tense marker that occupies the same position in the template that the I does, which is a person marker. So that's another issue. The R in Gata is not a plural marker at all. It's a pluractional marker. It's not a pronominal. I didn't understand your comment about the second plural object incorporation and omission in Gorum, since you had data that had a second plural object in it, and it does have it, so that I couldn't process that. Another issue, dual does still exist in Sora, only in the form of imperative, the so-called augmented imperative, but it does still have traces of it. I also didn't understand at all your conclusion about morphological simplification in Sora, which is, outside of Kerwarian, the most morphologically rich of the Munda languages. So it's a little bit difficult for me to process some of the things that you said there. And moreover, I get, you did the best you could with the data that you had, but it shows the shortcomings of not working with texts to understand the grammar of languages as complicated as the Munda language family. Because a lot of what you're saying just doesn't hold when you see the way the language works in actual practice, not just in elicitation. So that's a meta issue that I don't expect you to address, but I want you to be aware of, that's all.
Oh, okay, so yes, we'll take note of that.
Thank you, Greg, for the input. Any other questions or comments?
And if Gregory sir doesn't mind, we'd like to reach out to him because we have been reading a lot of his work also.
Sure, of course. Also, at last year's ICAL, Apino Gamango and a couple of colleagues gave a talk on the deictic system of Sora, which is a little bit more complicated than you said there. And you might contact him to get some more data from the deictic system. There's an up-downhill distinction in the Sora deictic system that you haven't examined at all there. There's quite a bit more than 4 terms in the Sora deictic demonstrative system. But yeah, I'd be happy to, correspond. But I'd also recommend reaching out to Apino because, A, he's a native speaker, and B, he's done specific work on deixis and demonstratives in Sora.
Okay, sir, we'll surely do. We'll reach out to both of you.
Any other questions or comments? This does not seem to be the case. So let's thank the speaker and her team again for this presentation. Sorry, there's just one comment came in. It's good to have actual word categories, or it's like career, which whatever lexical base can perform a noun or verb. A question by Vietle in the chat box.
Lexical base can perform as noun. Yeah, Gutov doesn't seem to have actual word categories. For example, for adjectives, they usually add the lexeme kang, which for now we call it as adjectivizer. Yeah, so it doesn't seem to have actual word categories in Gutov.
Yeah, I think in general, Southern Munda or all Munda languages could be argued to lack lexical word categories, but they have syntactic head categories that function as heads in whatever framework you want to call it. DPs and TPs or NP or VP or whatever your predilection is. But obviously in the way they're used, they function syntactically as predicates and argument instantiators semantically, but they're also lexically not typically specified for word class. But that would be true across all of them, not just Karrier, Gutov, or Sora, blah blah.
Okay, makes sense, and Vietli is happy with the answer. Good. I think that brings us to the end of this talk. Thank you again. Anything, Baite, for this presentation?
Thank you.